In the old days, Horton's Bay was a lumbering town. No one who lived in it was out of sound of the big saws in the mill by the lake. Then one year there were no more logs to make lumber. The lumber schooners came into the bay and were loaded with the cut of the mill that stood stacked in the yard. All the piles of lumber were carried away. The big mill building had all its machinery that was removable taken out and hoisted on board one of the schooners by the men who had worked in the mill. The schooner moved out of the bay toward the open lake, carrying the two great saws, the traveling carriage that hurled the logs against the revolving circular saws, and all the rollers, wheels, belts, and iron piled on a hull-deep load of lumber. Its open hold covered with canvas and lashed tight, the sails of the schooner filled, and it moved out into the open lake, carrying with it everything that had made the mill a mill, and Horton's Bay a town. The one-story bunk houses, the eating house, the company store, the mill offices, and the big mill itself stood deserted in the acres of sawdust that covered the swampy meadow by the shore of the bay. 10 years later there was nothing of the mill left, except the broken white limestone of its foundations, showing through the swampy second growth as Nick and Marjorie rowed along the shore. They were trolling along the edge of the channel bank, where the bottom dropped off suddenly from sandy shallows to 12 feet of dark water. They were trolling on their way to set night lines for rainbow trout. "There's our old ruin, Nick," Marjorie said. Nick, rowing, looked at the white stones in the green trees. "There it is," he said. "Can you remember when it was a mill?" Marjorie asked. "I can just remember," Nick said. "It seems more like a castle," Marjorie said. Nick said nothing. They rowed on, out of sight of the mill, following the shoreline. Then Nick cut across the bay. "They aren't striking," he said. "No," Marjorie said. She was intent on the rod all the time they trolled, even when she talked. She loved to fish. She loved to fish with Nick. Close beside the boat, a big trout broke the surface of the water. Nick pulled hard on one oar so the boat would turn and the bait, spinning far behind, would pass where the trout was feeding. As the trout's back came up out of the water, the minnows jumped wildly. They sprinkled the surface like a handful of shot thrown into the water. Another trout broke the water, feeding on the other side of the boat. "They're feeding," Marjorie said. "But they won't strike," Nick said. He rowed the boat around to troll past both the feeding fish, then headed it for the point. Marjorie did not reel in until the boat touched the shore.